In Houston's criminal underworld, Kim Min-ho answered to no one. He controlled half the city's illegal operations with an iron fist. Trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. So when his new maid started leaving his penthouse every night at exactly 9:47 p.m. carrying bags she never brought in, his instincts screamed betrayal. For 26 days, he watched. For 26 nights, his suspicion grew darker. Was she stealing his money? Selling his secrets to rival gangs? On the 27th night, he followed her into Houston's most dangerous neighborhood, gun-loaded, ready to end the threat. What he discovered didn't just shock him. It shattered everything he thought he knew about power. Kim Min-ho built his empire on one unbreakable rule. Everyone is either an asset or a threat. At 46, he'd survived 3 decades in organized crime by trusting his paranoia more than his people. His network controlled gambling, protection rackets, and smuggling operations across Houston. Rivals feared him. Police avoided him. His own soldiers never met his eyes. Shanice Williams had worked for him exactly 4 weeks. Quiet, professional, efficient. She cleaned his penthouse, prepared his meals, never asked about the men in expensive suits who came and went at 2 a.m. Never questioned the locked rooms. Never flinched when she heard raised voices behind closed doors. Perfect. Until she wasn't. 26 days ago, Min-ho's security cameras caught something impossible to ignore. Shanice, leaving his building at 9:47 p.m., struggling under the weight of 2 bulging plastic bags. Bags that weren't there when she arrived that morning. His Lieutenant Jae-sung ran every protocol: inventory checks, safe combinations, hidden cash stashes, nothing missing. But those bags kept reappearing, night after night. Same time, same route. In Min-ho's world, patterns meant danger. And Shanice had a pattern. The Serpent Syndicate had been making moves on his territory for weeks. 3 of his operations hit. Someone was feeding them information, and Shanice was new, too convenient. Tuesday night. Rain turning Houston's streets into rivers of neon light. Shanice left his building right on schedule, 9:47 p.m., 2 bags, hood pulled up against the downpour. This time, Min-ho was 3 cars behind her bus, rain drumming on his Mercedes roof, Glock 19 cold against his ribs. Tonight, he'd learn the truth. And if that truth was betrayal, Shanice Williams would join the list of people who'd underestimated him. She wouldn't be the first. She'd just be the most recent. Stop. Before we go any further, I need you to understand something. You're about to hear a story that will wreck you. And in about 40 minutes, when you're sitting there with tears in your eyes, trying to process what you just heard, you're going to think, I should subscribe to this channel. But here's the problem. By then, you'll be emotionally exhausted. You'll close the video and forget. So I'm asking you now, while your heart is still intact, hit that subscribe button. Because if this story does what I think it's going to do to you, you're going to want to make sure you never miss another one like it. And trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The bus lurched through Houston's rain-slicked streets, its windows fogged with condensation. Min-ho kept his Mercedes 3 cars back, watching the taillights blur through the downpour. Professional distance. He'd tracked targets across 3 continents. This should be simple. But something felt wrong. Shanice sat near the back of the bus, her silhouette barely visible through the dirty windows. The bags rested on her lap, heavy enough to make her shoulders sag. Min-ho's hand moved to the Glock in his jacket. The metal was cold, familiar, comforting. The bus turned south onto Dowling Street. Min-ho knew this route, 3rd Ward. High poverty, low profit. His organization didn't operate here because there was nothing worth taking. So why was his maid coming to a neighborhood with nothing? She pulled the cord. The bus hissed to a stop. Min-ho parked half a block back, killed the engine. Rain hammered the roof like bullets. He watched Shanice step off the bus, pulling her hood up against the storm. The bags made her movements awkward, unbalanced. She didn't look around for a tail, didn't check for surveillance. Either she was very good or very innocent. He needed to know which. Minho followed on foot, staying in shadows that the streetlights couldn't quite reach. His shoes were Italian leather, ruined now by puddles and trash-strewn gutters. The neighborhood pressed in around him. Boarded windows, tagged walls. A homeless man huddled in a doorway, not even looking up as Minho passed. Shanice walked 4 blocks struggling with the bags. She turned down an alley behind a church. The sign read, "Blessed Redeemer Baptist" in faded letters. Paint peeled from the walls. Windows dark. Abandoned. Like everything else here. But Shanice knocked on the back door. 3 quick raps, then 2 slow ones. A pattern. Minho pressed against the wet brick, watching. His heart rate stayed steady. 30 years in this life had taught him to stay calm when violence was close. The door opened. Warm light spilled out. A child's voice. "Miss Shanice, you came." "Of course, baby. I'll always come." She disappeared inside. Minho stood in the rain, calculating angles. No guards, no lookouts, no gang signatures on the walls. Just an old church and a woman with bags. This didn't fit any scenario he'd mapped. Serpent Syndicate wouldn't meet here. Too exposed. Too public. And if she was stealing from him, where was the buyer? 5 minutes passed. Rain soaked through his suit. Minho moved closer. Found a basement window partially below ground level. He crouched down, peered inside. What he saw made no sense. Children, maybe 20 of them, ranging from toddlers to teenagers. Single mothers at folding tables. And Shanice, standing at a huge pot on a propane stove, ladling soup into paper bowls. Her hair was down. She wore an apron over her clothes. And she was smiling in a way Minho had never seen during 4 weeks of employment. "Miss Shanice, can I have seconds?" A little boy, maybe 7. "Everyone eats first, Terrell. Then we talk about seconds. You know the rules." The boy nodded, took his bowl to a table. Other kids waited in line, patient and polite. They called her by name. She called them back. Every single one. Minho watched as she unpacked the bags. Not stolen cash, not intelligence files, groceries, bread, vegetables, rice, canned goods, the things she'd bought with her own money, the things he'd suspected were evidence of betrayal. An older woman approached Shanice, hugged her. "Bless you, child. These babies were hungry tonight." Minho's hand was still on his gun. He'd come here ready to kill a traitor. Instead, he'd found something he didn't have words for. Something he hadn't seen in 3 decades of violence and control. Someone genuinely good. The rain continued to fall. Minho stayed frozen at the window, a man who'd killed for less than a wrong look, watching a woman give everything for a child's meal. The gun in his jacket suddenly felt heavier than it ever had. Inside, a teenage boy helped Shanice serve. "Miss Shanice taught me to cook," he said to one of the mothers. Pride in his voice. Purpose. Minho had built an empire on reading people. Everyone had an angle. Everyone wanted something: power, money, revenge, survival. But watching Shanice move through that basement, serving children who had nothing, calling them by name, celebrating their small victories, he couldn't find the angle. She didn't want anything except to help. It terrified him more than any rival ever had. Because if Shanice Williams could spend 3 years feeding hungry children with money she didn't have, simply because someone has to, then everything Minho believed about human nature was wrong. And if he was wrong about that, what else had he been wrong about? The question sat in his chest like a stone. He stood up, rain streaming down his face. His Mercedes waited in the darkness. He could leave now. Forget this. Let her keep her secret and continue his paranoid existence, suspicious of everyone, trusting no one. But something held him there. Minho looked through the window one more time. Shanice knelt beside a little girl, maybe 6 years old. She brushed the girl's hair back from her face with such tenderness that Minho felt something crack in his chest. The girl hugged Shanice, and Shanice closed her eyes like she was holding something precious and fragile. For the first time in 30 years, Kim Min-ho didn't know what to do next. Min-ho couldn't leave. He told himself it was professional curiosity, gathering intelligence, understanding potential threats. But he'd been lying to himself for 3 decades. Why stop now? He watched through the window for another hour. Watched Shanice interact with each child like they mattered. Like their small victories were worth celebrating. A mother got a job. Shanice cheered like she'd won the lottery. A kid passed a math test. Shanice gave him extra cornbread, made him promise to keep trying. The children were mostly Black and Latino, clean but wearing worn clothes. They respected Shanice in a way Min-ho's soldiers never respected him. His men feared him. These children loved her. Around 11, families started leaving with containers of leftovers. They thanked Shanice quietly, some with tears in their eyes. She hugged each one, told them to stay strong, promised she'd be back next week. The teenage boy stayed behind, helping clean up, washing dishes in a small sink. Shanice dried them, stacking plates carefully. Min-ho made a decision. He needed answers. His footsteps echoed on the basement stairs. Shanice froze mid-wash, hands still in the soapy water. She turned slowly. Recognition flashed in her eyes, then fear. "Mr. Kim." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. The teenager, DeAndre she'd called him, tensed like he was ready to fight. Protective. Min-ho noted that. "How long have you been out there?" Shanice asked. "Long enough." Silence. Min-ho stood in his expensive suit, soaking wet, completely out of place in this basement church. Shanice waited, probably for judgment, for consequences. DeAndre stepped closer to Shanice. "Miss Shanice, you know this man?" "It's okay, baby. This is Mr. Kim. I work for him." The boy didn't relax. "You want me to stay?" "No, honey, you go on home. Your mama's waiting." DeAndre left reluctantly, shooting Min-ho a look that said he'd better not hurt her. Min-ho respected that. Loyalty was rare. When they were alone, Min-ho moved to one of the folding tables. Sat down. The chair creaked under him. Everything in this place was held together by willpower and prayer. "The bags," he said, "every night for 26 days." Shanice nodded, dried her hands on a towel. "Groceries, whatever I can afford after rent." "You've been doing this with your paycheck?" "Yes, sir." The sir bothered him. After what he'd just witnessed, it felt wrong, but he didn't correct her. "Why?" Shanice didn't answer immediately. She hung up the towel, moved to sit across from him. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Outside, rain continued to fall. "Because someone has to," she finally said. "That's not an answer." Shanice met his eyes. Hers were tired but clear. "It's the only answer there is, Mr. Kim. These children are hungry. I have food. What else matters?" Min-ho had interrogated men in worse places than this. He knew when people were lying. Shanice wasn't lying. She genuinely believed that was enough reason. Children were hungry, so she fed them. Simple. Pure. Incomprehensible to a man like him. "How long?" 3 years. Since the church closed down, I've been running it. Alone? Mostly. Some volunteers come and go. But yes, mostly alone. 3 years. Before she even worked for him. This wasn't about manipulation or playing an angle. This was who she was. "Are you going to fire me?" The question caught him off guard. For feeding hungry children? For using work time to buy groceries? For lying about where I go? Min-ho realized she thought this was the end, that he'd come here to punish her for having the audacity to be kind. "No," he said. Relief washed over her face. "Thank you, Mr. Kim. But I have questions." "Okay. Tell me about these children." Shanice looked surprised, then wary. Was this a trap? But Min-ho waited, and eventually she started talking. Terrell, 6 years old. Mother worked at the hospital. father in prison. Lakeisha, 9, brilliant at math but no money for school supplies. DeAndre, 16, wanted to be a chef but had no path to culinary school. The Martinez twins, 12, mother cleaned houses, father deported last year. She knew every name, every story, every struggle. Minho listened without interrupting. He'd built his empire by knowing everyone's weakness, everyone's pressure point. But listening to Shanice catalog the struggles of families in Third Ward, he realized something uncomfortable. His organization had never even noticed these people existed. They had nothing worth taking, so they were invisible. These people aren't on anybody's radar, Shanice said. Not police, not social services, not churches with money. Just forgotten. Why you? Minho asked. Why is this your responsibility? Shanice went very quiet, her hands folded on the table. When she spoke, her voice was softer. It's not. But I understand what it's like to be forgotten. She didn't elaborate. Minho didn't push. He understood secrets. The clock on the wall read 1:15 a.m. Shanice stood. I should go. Early shift tomorrow. I'll drive you home. That's not necessary. It's 1:00 a.m. in Third Ward. I'm driving you. Something in his tone said there was no argument. Shanice grabbed her coat, her empty bags. They walked to his Mercedes in silence. The drive was quiet. Minho navigated through empty streets, past the territories he controlled. Shanice lived in a small apartment building, bars on the windows, paint peeling from the walls. He pulled up to the curb. Thank you, Mr. Kim. For what? For not firing me. For the ride. For... She trailed off. For not being the man you thought I was, Minho finished in his head. For not doing what I came here to do. Shanice got out, walked to her building. Minho waited until she was inside before driving away. On the way back to his penthouse, he couldn't stop thinking about what he'd seen. For 30 years, he'd controlled Houston's underworld by knowing everyone's secrets. But sitting beside him had been a woman whose secret was the opposite of what he'd imagined. She wasn't hiding crimes. She was hiding grace. And somehow, that was more dangerous than any rival gang. Morning came with no sleep. Minho stood at his penthouse window, watching Houston wake up. His phone buzzed. Business. The Serpent Syndicate had hit another one of his operations. 3 soldiers injured. He should care about that. Should be planning retaliation. Instead, he kept seeing Shanice's face as she served soup to children. At 6 a.m., Shanice arrived for work. Same as always. She cleaned, prepared his breakfast, moved through his space like a ghost. But Minho watched her differently now. Noticed the way she paused at the top of stairs, catching her breath. The way her hands trembled slightly when she poured his coffee. She was exhausted. And she'd be back at that church tonight. Shanice. She turned, surprised he'd used her name. Yes, Mr. Kim? Sit down. I'm working, sir. Sit. She sat, wary, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Minho didn't know how to say what he needed to say. 30 years of giving orders, making threats, controlling outcomes. But this required something different. I need to know more, he said. About what? About you. About why you do this. Shanice's eyes hardened slightly. I told you last night. Someone has to. That's what you do. Not why. Does it matter? It does to me. She studied him for a long moment. Then something shifted in her expression. Not quite trust, but maybe the beginning of it. Can I ask you something first? She said. Minho nodded. What do you really do, Mr. Kim? Not the businesses, not the meetings. What do you actually do? Fair question, and she deserved honesty. I control things, he said. Territories, operations, people. I make sure my organization stays on top. That rivals know not to challenge us. That everyone pays what they owe. Through violence? When necessary. Shanice absorbed this. And the men who come and go at odd hours? Soldiers, accountants, People who help me maintain control. So you're... She didn't finish. What people in Third Ward would call a gangster. Yes. He expected judgment, disgust. Instead, Shanice just looked sad. I thought you might be, she said quietly. The guns. The way people move around you. Like they're afraid. Most people should be afraid of me. Should I be? The question hung between them. Minho thought about the gun he'd carried last night, the violence he'd been ready to commit, the assumption that she was his enemy. No, he said. You shouldn't be. Why not? Because you're not my enemy. And I don't hurt people who aren't my enemies. What about people who are just in the way? The question cut deeper than she probably knew. Minho had hurt plenty of people who were just in the way. Collateral damage. The cost of doing business. I'm trying to be better about that, he said. Shanice almost smiled. Trying. That's something, I guess. They sat in silence. Minho's coffee grew cold. Outside, the city moved through its routines. People going to work, living their lives. Unaware that 30 floors above them, a crime lord and a maid were having a conversation that might change everything. My daughter died 3 years ago, Shanice said suddenly. Her name was Amara. She was 6 years old. Minho went very still. Someone took her. Took my husband too. They wanted money I didn't have. And when I couldn't pay, her voice cracked. They killed them both. Right there on the phone. I heard it happen. Minho felt something cold settle in his stomach. The police tried. They really did. But the case went cold. No arrests, no justice. Just gone. My whole family, because I couldn't afford $200,000. Who took them? Gang called Los Demonios. Fifth Ward operation. They do kidnapping for ransom. Target poor families who can't pay. Kill them when the money doesn't come. Minho knew Los Demonios. Knew their leader, Ricardo Morales. Knew their business model. It was effective if you had no conscience. That's when I started at the church, Shanice continued. 3 weeks after the funeral. I couldn't save Amara, but I could save other children. Make sure they didn't go hungry. Make sure they had someone who cared. Every child you serve? Is the child I couldn't save? Yes. The truth of it hung in the air. Shanice wasn't doing charity work. She was doing penance, grief, love with nowhere else to go. I'm sorry, Minho said. The words felt inadequate. Don't be sorry. Just don't fire me for trying to help. I won't. Shanice stood, back to work, back to being invisible. But Minho stopped her. Tonight, at the church, I'd like to help. She turned surprised. Help how? However you need. I can carry bags, serve food, whatever. Why? Because you're doing it alone, and you shouldn't have to. Shanice studied him for a long time, then nodded slowly. Okay, but this isn't about you feeling better about yourself. These people need real help, not charity from someone trying to ease their guilt. Understood. She left to continue cleaning. Minho returned to his window and started planning something he'd never planned before. Not revenge, not territory expansion, not violence, justice. Minho called Ji-woo his intelligence specialist. I need everything on Los Demonios. Everything. Boss, they're not in our territory. Why? I didn't ask for questions. Yes, boss. By noon, Ji-woo delivered a file. Thick, detailed. Minho read it alone in his study, door locked. Los Demonios, led by Ricardo El Diablo Morales, operations in Fifth Ward and East End. Primary income, kidnapping for ransom, targeting low-income families. Success rate, high. Conviction rate, 0. Police couldn't touch them. Witnesses too scared to talk. 47 kidnappings in 3 years. 3 families got their loved ones back alive. 31 ended in murder. 13 still missing. Presumed dead. Amara Williams wasn't the first child they'd killed for money. She wasn't even the 10th. Minho kept reading. Found the police report from May 15, 2021. David Williams, 32. Amara Williams, 6. Abducted outside their apartment. Ransom demand, $200,000. Shanice raised $8,000 in 36 hours. Not enough. The ransom call transcripts made his stomach turn. Shanice begging. Amara crying in the background. Mommy, I want to come home. Then gunshots. Then screaming. Minho had to stop reading. Put the file down. He'd ordered executions, watched men die, delivered violence without mercy. But reading about a 6-year-old girl begging for her mother while she was being murdered, that crossed lines even he had. He picked up the file again. Forced himself to finish. Bodies found in an abandoned warehouse. Execution style. Crime scene photos showed exactly what Los Demonios did to people who couldn't pay. David Williams, Amara Williams, forever 6. Police investigation went nowhere. Case went cold after 6 months. No arrests, no justice. Los Demonios still operating freely. Minho pulled up his organization's intelligence on the gang. 12 members involved in the Williams kidnapping. All still alive, all still active. Ricardo El Diablo. Morales, leader, ordered the hit. Miguel Santos, triggerman, shot David. Carlos Vega, triggerman, shot Amara. 9 others. Lookouts, drivers, enforcers. Minho made a list. Names, addresses, routines, vulnerabilities. Then he called Jae Sung. War room. 1 hour. Don't tell anyone why. That evening, Minho drove to Shanice's apartment. Waited in his car. At 9:15, she left with her bags, headed to the church. He followed again, parked outside Blessed Redeemer. Watched through the window as she served dinner to children. One little girl, maybe 6 years old, the same age Amara would be now. Shanice knelt beside her, brushed her hair back tenderly. The girl hugged her. Shanice closed her eyes, holding her like something precious and fragile. Minho sat in the rain and understood something fundamental. Shanice had spent 3 years feeding other people's children because she couldn't save her own. Every meal was a memorial. Every child was Amara's echo. And the men who'd murdered her family were walking free. Laughing. Living their lives like Amara Williams never existed. Minho pulled out his phone. Texted Jiwoo. Full target packages on every Los Demonios member involved in the Williams kidnapping. Names, addresses, routines, vulnerabilities, everything. Jiwoo. Boss, what are we planning? Minho looked at Shanice through the window. Watched her serve soup with that heartbreaking smile. He typed back. Justice. Inside the church, Shanice laughed at something a child said. The sound carried through the rain. Pure, genuine, beautiful. Minho had built his empire on one principle. Everyone pays their debts. Los Demonios had a debt 3 years overdue. With interest, that meant blood. He started the car. Drove back to his penthouse. Made calls. Mobilized his organization. By midnight, the wheels were in motion. The police had failed Shanice. The courts had failed Amara. But Kim Minho had never failed to collect. And this debt? This one was personal. Can we just pause for a second? Because if you're feeling what I'm feeling right now, if your chest is tight and you're trying to figure out how a woman who lost everything is still out here feeding other people's children, then you understand why I can't stop telling stories like this. This is real grief transformed into real grace. And if you're the kind of person who doesn't run from emotions like this, who doesn't need everything sugar-coated and shallow, then you need to subscribe. Not because I'm begging, because content that makes you feel this deeply is dying. The algorithm hates it. It's too long, too real, too human. But people like you, people who are still here, still feeling, you're the reason it survives. Hit subscribe. Then let's watch this man's entire worldview shatter. The war room meeting lasted 3 hours. Minho laid out the targets. 12 Los Demonios members. Jae Sung and 3 other lieutenants listened as he explained the operation. I want all of them, Minho said. No exceptions. Jae Sung frowned. Boss, This isn't our territory. This could start a war. Then let it start. Over what? This happened 3 years ago to someone we don't know. Minho's voice dropped to ice. I know her now. That's enough. His lieutenants exchanged glances. They'd never seen him personally invested like this. Usually he was calculating. Risk versus reward. This was different. Hyun-soo spoke up. Boss, who was she to you? Someone good. In a world that didn't deserve her. The plan was methodical. Start with the outer circle. Work inward. Make deaths look unrelated. Overdoses, accidents, gang disputes. Leave El Diablo for last. He needed to know why before he died. Week 1, 3 targets down. Luis Martinez, lookout, found dead in his apartment. Fentanyl overdose. Police ruled it accidental. Jorge Ruiz, driver. Car accident on Highway 59. Brake lines cut. He drove into an overpass support at 80 Matipaslamp. Investigators called it mechanical failure. Pablo Mendez, enforcer, stabbed in a bar fight. Self-defense. The attacker, one of Minho's operatives, disappeared before police arrived. Week 2. Los Demonios started noticing. El Diablo called an emergency meeting. 3 soldiers dead in 7 days. Too suspicious, but no pattern. No identified enemy. Diego Torres, enforcer, home invasion, shot with his own gun, staged as robbery. Antonio Ruiz, lookout. Disappeared after leaving a strip club. Body found in Buffalo Bayou 3 days later. Drowned, hands and feet bound. Now Los Demonios knew they were being hunted. Security increased. El Diablo went into hiding, but Minho had been playing this game longer. Carlos Vega was paranoid. The man who shot Amara never went anywhere alone. Minho's team tracked him for 4 days. Finally, Vega visited his mother's house at 2 a.m. Alone. Minho went personally for this one. He entered the house silent as death. Found Vega in the kitchen making a sandwich. Vega turned, reached for his gun. Minho was already aiming. Move and you're dead. Don't move and we talk. Vega froze. Who the hell are you? Someone who collects debts. What debt? May 15th, 2021. Amara Williams. 6 years old. You remember her? Vega's eyes widened. That was 3 years ago, man. We got paid for that job. You got paid to murder a kindergartner? Look. It was just business. El Diablo's orders. We didn't want to, but... You shot a 6-year-old girl in the head. She was crying, man. Wouldn't stop crying. El Diablo said make it quick. Minho didn't let him finish. Silenced gunshot. Vega dropped. Minho stood over the body. Amara Williams. Her name was Amara Williams. He left a photo of Amara on Vega's chest. First personal message. Miguel Santos, the man who shot David, had gone underground, but Jiwoo found him hiding in a warehouse in East End. Minho's team surrounded the building. Brief firefight. 2 gang members down. Santos wounded, cornered. Minho walked in alone. You're Kim Minho, Santos said, bleeding from a leg wound. The Korean boss from Midtown. You've heard of me. Why are you doing this? We never touched your operations. You touched someone under my protection. Minho showed him Amara's photo. You killed this child. And her father. Recognition flashed. The Williams job? Man, that was El Diablo's call. We were just following orders. But you still pulled the trigger. She's not even your family. Why do you care? Minho thought about Shanice kneeling beside that little girl in the church. Thought about 3 years of grief transformed into grace. Because someone has to. He emptied the clip. Left Amara's photo on Santos's body. 9 down, 3 to go. But Jiwoo had news. Boss, Los Demonios is watching Shanice. Minho's blood ran cold. How many? 2 men. Rotating shifts outside the church. His vendetta had put her in danger. The woman he was trying to avenge was now a target. Pull our surveillance back, Minho ordered. Make it look like we've moved on. Boss? El Diablo thinks she's bait. Let him think he's safe. Then we end this. But Minho knew the clock was ticking. He'd have to move fast. Before Los Demonios realized Shanice wasn't connected to him, before they hurt her to send a message. 9 down, 3 to go. And El Diablo was learning the wrong lesson. He thought Shanice was the reason for the attacks. He was right. But he didn't understand she wasn't bait. She was everything. Shanice arrived for work looking exhausted, 3 weeks into Minho's hunt. She hadn't noticed the news. Too busy feeding children to watch TV. Too focused on survival to track gang warfare. But this morning, the news was playing in Minho's kitchen. 11th death in what police are calling a gang war between Los Demonios and an unidentified organization. Shanice froze mid-pour. Coffee splashed on the counter. Los Demonios, the name that destroyed her life. They were dying? She looked at Minho. Really looked. Saw him in ways she'd avoided for 3 weeks. Mr. Kim, what do you do? Really do? Minho met her eyes. Long silence. What do you think I do? I think you're the kind of man who makes people disappear. He didn't insult her by lying. Yes. She set down the coffee pot, hands shaking. And Los Demonios? The ones dying on the news? Yes. Shanice sank into a chair, processing. Why? They're not in your territory. I've heard your men talk. Minho stood, walked to the window, looked out at his city. They took something from someone I know. She caught the careful phrasing. Someone you know, not someone you do business with. No. Her voice dropped to a whisper. What did they take? Everything. From who? He turned to face her. From you. Shanice went pale. How do you know? I know everything about people in my life. I had you investigated. Anger flashed. You had no right. I had every right. You work in my home, but that's not why I looked. Then why? Because I followed you to the church, saw you feed those children, saw you smile at a 6-year-old girl the way a mother smiles at her daughter, and I needed to know why. Tears in Shanice's eyes now. You had no right to dig into my life. I found the police reports, the ransom call transcripts. I heard you begging them not to hurt Amara. Stop. I heard the gunshots through the phone. I read what they did. Shanice was crying, 3 years of buried grief surfacing. You don't understand. I understand the men who murdered your daughter were walking free. Were walking free. The past tense registered. What did you do? Minho listed the names. Luis Martinez, Jorge Ruiz, Pablo Mendez, Diego Torres, Antonio Ruiz, Carlos Vega. He shot Amara. Miguel Santos. He shot David. Stop. 9 men who participated, 9 men dead. Shanice's horror was visceral. You killed them. You killed them all. They murdered your family. They weren't yours to kill. You don't have the right. Neither did they. But they did it anyway. The argument escalated. Shanice called it revenge. Minho called it justice. She accused him of doing it for power. He denied it, then admitted he did it for both her and himself. Finally, she told him about his parents, how 3 men had killed Korean immigrants running a convenience store, how the police investigated for 2 weeks, then gave up, how the killers went free. I became what I am because I learned the only justice in this world is the justice you take yourself, Minho said. Shanice's voice softened. So this is about your parents. This is about every person the system failed, including you. But she wasn't grateful. She was horrified. Killing those men doesn't bring Amara back. No, nothing brings her back. But they don't get to walk free either. And what about the last 3? You said 9 dead. Los Demonios has more members. Minho's silence confirmed it. You're not done. Ricardo Morales, El Diablo, the one who ordered it. Soon. Shanice stood, paced. And then what? You kill him and everything's even? Then your daughter's murderers are dead. All of them. Did you do this for me or for you? Minho couldn't answer immediately. Both. That's honest, at least. She told him about the 3 years since Amara's death, learning to live with it, learning to forgive herself, finding purpose in feeding other children. Killing them won't heal me, she said, won't give me peace. But saving other families? That might mean something. She issued an ultimatum. If he killed El Diablo, she'd never forgive him. But if he found another way, legal justice, building a case, using his resources to prevent more Amaras, then maybe there was hope. I want you to prove that killing isn't the only power you have. Minho struggled with it. He'd been planning El Diablo's death for weeks, had imagined the moment El Diablo realized why he was dying. I can't let him walk free. Then don't kill him. Find another way. There is no other way in my world. Then maybe it's time you lived in a different world. Shanice walked to the door. Stopped. I need time away from here, from you. You're quitting? I don't know. I need to think. She left. Minho stood alone in his penthouse. 9 men dead by his order. 3 more to go. But the woman he did it for just walked away. And for the second time in his life, he felt powerless. 3 days. Shanice didn't return. Minho had El Diablo's location, his lieutenants ready to move. 1 word and it would be done. But he kept thinking about what Shanice said. Prove that killing isn't the only power you have. He had Jiwoo pull different records, city crime statistics, community reports, Los Demonios' operations for the past 5 years, 47 kidnappings, 31 murders, 13 missing. Amara wasn't the first, wasn't the 10th. This was their business model. If Minho killed El Diablo, someone else would take over. Los Demonios was too profitable to disappear. The kidnappings would continue. That evening, he drove to Blessed Redeemer, watched Shanice serve soup. She moved through the motions, but the light was gone. DeAndre stayed close, worried. Minho walked down the basement stairs. Children looked up, curious. Shanice saw him, went still. Can we talk? She nodded to DeAndre. They stepped outside. Rain starting again. Have you killed him yet? No. But you're going to. I don't know. They stood in the alley. Shanice told him about the rage after Amara died, how she'd wanted them all dead, how she'd planned it in sleepless nights, but she wasn't strong enough, wasn't capable of violence. Do you know what that's like? To want justice and have no way to get it? Yes, Minho said quietly. I know exactly what that's like. She told him about the powerlessness. Minho told her about choosing power instead. About becoming what he feared most to avoid feeling helpless again. I want them dead, Shanice admitted. God forgive me, I do. But killing them won't heal me, won't bring Amara back, won't stop the pain. So what do you want me to do? I want you to be better than them. Better than the system that failed us. Minho proposed an alternative. Using his resources to build a legal case, police contacts, FBI connections, evidence gathering, witnesses he could protect and relocate. Make it so airtight even corrupt cops couldn't ignore it. That could take months, years, and Los Demonios keeps operating. I can stop El Diablo tonight, or I can do it the legal way, which takes time and might not work. Shanice studied him. One way makes you a vigilante, the other makes you someone trying to do better. She gave him a choice. Kill El Diablo and lose her forever, or build the case, bring legal justice, prove he was more than a killer. If you kill him, I'll never forgive you. But if you build the case, even if it takes years, then maybe there's hope. Hope for what? Hope that you're more than just another killer. Hope that Amara's death leads to something other than more death. Minho stood in the rain. The easy path was violence. The hard path was restraint. Faith that the system could work if you pushed it hard enough. He didn't have that faith. But Shanice did. Okay, I'll build the case. Legal justice. No more killings. Shanice exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for days. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This might not work. But you're trying. That's what matters. They returned to the basement. Children eating, laughing. Safe for this evening. Minho watched Shanice serve food, watched her turn grief into grace. This was what he was protecting now. Not his empire, not his reputation, just this. Children eating warm food served by a woman who chose love over rage. He called Jae-sung. Pull the hit team back. We're changing strategy. I need investigators, not soldiers. Financial forensics, witness protection, legal consultants. Long pause. Some of the men won't like this. Then they can leave. I need people who can think. As Minho drove back to his penthouse, he calculated the cost. Building a legal case would take a year, maybe 2. More families would suffer. More children might die. This was harder than killing, harder than war. It required faith in a system that had failed him. He didn't have that faith. But Shanice did. And for reasons he was still understanding, that was enough. 2 months in. Minho assembled a team. Retired FBI agent on payroll, forensic accountant, private investigators. Jae-sung stayed loyal. Ji-woo stayed because the challenge interested him. 4 lieutenants walked away. Thought he'd gone soft. The forensic accountant, Robert Chen, found the money trail. Los Demonios laundering ransom payments through car washes and restaurants. $4.2 million in 3 years. 47 kidnappings. Prosecutable. Minho identified 12 surviving families, victims too terrified to testify. He offered relocation, new identities, financial support. 3 families agreed. El Diablo retaliated, sent soldiers to intimidate witnesses. Firebombed one family's house. They escaped barely. Minho moved all witness families to safe houses, guarded 24/7. Expensive, resource-intensive. His organization bled money. Hyun-soo confronted him. Boss, we're not social workers. We're soldiers. We're whatever I say we are. This isn't what I signed up for. We're losing respect. Other gangs think we're weak. Let them think what they want. Hyun-soo left. Minho didn't stop him. The remaining team was smaller but focused. Shanice visited occasionally. Minho showed her the evidence, financial records, witness testimonies, pattern of kidnappings. This is really happening. You're actually building a case. I made a promise. You could have broken it. I'd have known. But the FBI said it wasn't enough. They needed direct connection between El Diablo and violence. Either him on tape ordering a hit, or someone from his inner circle flipping. Ji-woo found the weak link. Mateo Vega, Carlos Vega's younger brother. Low-level Los Demonios. Wasn't involved in Amara's kidnapping. But his brother's death shook him. Minho met Mateo in a parking garage. Alone. You killed my brother. Your brother killed a 6-year-old girl. He was following orders. So are you. How many more children die before you stop following? Minho made an offer. Testify. Wear a wire. Record El Diablo ordering hits. Build a case that puts him away for life. In exchange, witness protection, new identity, new city, new life. Mateo hesitated. My girlfriend's pregnant. 3 months. Then choose different for your kid. Mateo agreed. Agent Williams fitted the wire. Mateo went into a meeting with El Diablo. Minho, Jae-sung, and Williams listened from a surveillance van 2 blocks away. The conversation was gold. El Diablo admitting to ordering the Williams hit. That bitch couldn't pay, so her family paid different. Cough up the money or cough up blood. He laughed about it. Said 6 years old didn't matter. Should have paid faster. We got him, Agent Williams said. Direct admission. This is enough for life in prison. 2 weeks later, FBI raided Los Demonios safe houses simultaneously. El Diablo, his lieutenants, 14 soldiers arrested. Seized $1.3 million, weapons, financial records. Media coverage. Massive gang bust in Houston. Minho brought Shanice a newspaper. Ricardo Morales arrested in connection with 47 kidnappings. She read it twice, hands shaking. He's really arrested. Facing 23 counts of murder, 47 counts of kidnapping, RICO charges. He'll never see daylight again. Tears streamed down Shanice's face. Amara gets justice. She gets justice. Minho had spent significant resources, money, time, personnel. His organization was smaller, reputation damaged. Some rivals thought he was weak, but Los Demonios was destroyed legally. El Diablo wouldn't be replaced because he was in prison, not dead. And Shanice was crying tears of relief instead of grief. This didn't feel like his other victories. It felt smaller and larger at the same time. That was victory, not conquest, healing. Before we see what Minho chooses, I want you to think about what you've just witnessed. A woman who lost her child, who heard her baby's last moments over a phone, and instead of drowning in rage, she's been feeding other people's children for 3 years. Just think about that. Now ask yourself, what kind of person are you? Are you someone who witnesses that level of grace and walks away unchanged? Or are you someone who says, that matters. I want more of that in my life. I want to support stories that remind me what we're capable of. Subscribing takes 2 seconds. Costs you nothing. But it tells the universe, and it tells me, that beauty like this deserves to exist. Don't be the person who felt everything and did nothing. Subscribe. Then let's find out if a killer can choose mercy. 3 months after El Diablo's arrest, Minho drove Shanice to an empty building in 3rd Ward. What is this? Yours, if you want it. Former community center, 15,000 square feet. Kitchen, dining hall, classrooms, medical clinic space. Minho had purchased it. I thought we could expand what you're doing. Shanice stared. I can't afford this. I can. Consider it my investment in making sure what happened to Amara doesn't happen to other children. He proposed the Amara Williams Foundation. Shanice's breath caught at her daughter's name. Focus areas: feeding children, supporting single mothers, preventing gang violence, providing resources the system didn't. Using what money? Mine. 30 years of criminal profits. Time to put it towards something that matters. Shanice hesitated. This is blood money. Yes. But money has no memory. It can be cleaned, repurposed, transformed. Her conditions were strict. No gang money directly to the foundation, legal corporation, legitimate income streams. She'd run it completely. Full control. Minho agreed to everything. 6 months of building, renovation, staffing. Shanice hired chefs, social workers, nurses, counselor, paid above market rate. If we value this work, we pay people accordingly. Month 5, soft opening, 60 kids, 30 mothers, hot meals, medical screenings, backpacks with supplies. Shanice spoke about Amara. She didn't get to grow up, but every child who walks through these doors gets a chance to. That's her legacy. Month 6, full operation, serving 150 meals a day, after-school tutoring, free medical clinic, job training for mothers. Minho attended the opening, stayed in the background, watched Shanice greet every child by name, saw mothers crying in gratitude for medical care they couldn't afford, saw DeAndre teaching younger kids to cook. This was what his money built. Not fear, not control, hope. Community response was mixed. Local news coverage positive, some skepticism about funding, but families who benefited didn't care about the source. Gang recruitment in 3rd Ward dropped. Kids had alternatives. Mothers had support. Small, localized, but measurable. Other gangs noticed. Some mocked him. Others were wary. He's building community loyalty. That's more dangerous than muscle. Minho didn't care about their opinions anymore. Weekly meetings with Shanice to discuss operations. Their dynamic shifted. Not employer-employee, not quite friends, partners. Mutual respect built on shared purpose. One evening after successful dinner service, Shanice asked, "Do you feel redeemed?" Minho considered. "No, redemption isn't something I think I get." "Why not?" "Because I've done things that can't be undone, people I've hurt, lives I've ended." "Then what is this?" "Repayment. I can't erase the debt, but I can keep paying against it." Shanice smiled. "Maybe that's all redemption is. Not erasing the past, but choosing better every day." "That's optimistic." "I've buried a daughter. I've learned that if you don't find hope somewhere, you'll drown." Minho drove home that night past his territories. The clubs, gambling houses, networks generating millions. His empire. But when he thought about legacy, he didn't think about those buildings. He thought about a 6-year-old girl he'd never met, whose name was now painted on a building feeding hungry children. He thought about Shanice, transforming grief into grace every day. And he thought maybe repayment was enough, because redemption was a gift he didn't deserve. But repayment? That he could do. Every day. For the rest of his life. 1 year later. Amara Foundation's first anniversary celebration. 200 people packed the building. Families from 3rd Ward and beyond. Banner. 1 year of hope. Amara Williams Foundation. Shanice stood at a podium. A year ago, this building was empty. Before that, abandoned. Before that, a place people had given up on. Kind of like me. Gentle laughter. She told Amara's story, the kidnapping, the impossible ransom, the loss. People cried. For 3 years, I fed other people's children because I couldn't save my own. It was penance, grief, love with nowhere to go. Then someone gave that love a home. She gestured to Minho in the back. "Mr. Kim, can you come up here?" He shook his head. Didn't want attention, but she insisted. He walked to the front slowly. The crowd didn't know who he was. Just a quiet Korean man in an expensive suit. This man funded this foundation, this building, the programs, the meals, all of it. Applause. But that's not why I asked him here. I asked because he taught me something I'd forgotten. That people can change. That darkness doesn't have to define you. That you can build something good even if your hands have done harm. DeAndre presented impact numbers. 54,750 meals served. Medical care for 340 families. 23 mothers employed. 67 kids kept in school. 8 families in witness protection. Personal testimonies. Maria Rodriguez about rebuilding after her son's kidnapping. Terrell's mother about food security. DeAndre about being accepted to culinary school. Minho spoke reluctantly. "I'm not a good man. I've spent 30 years in a profession that hurts people. When I met Miss Shanice, I suspected her of betraying me. Followed her ready to kill her. Instead, I found her feeding children with money she should have spent on herself. It broke something in me." He looked at the families. "I can't undo what I've done, can't bring back people I've hurt. But I can make sure children like Amara have advocates. Mothers like Shanice don't suffer alone. This foundation will continue as long as I live. And after, through trusts. Because Amara Williams deserves better than a gravestone. She deserves a legacy. And you deserve to be seen, protected, valued. That's what this place is. Sanctuary." Standing ovation. Shanice hugged him for the first time. "Thank you. For everything." Later, after most people left, they sat in the empty dining hall. "Do you feel different?" Shanice asked. "I still run a criminal organization, still do things you wouldn't approve of." "I know, so you're not transformed, not redeemed." "Maybe not, but I'm more than I was, and that counts." Shanice revealed she'd forgiven Los Demonios. "Not because they deserve it, because holding rage was killing me." Forgiveness isn't about El Diablo. It's about choosing peace over poison. "Can you forgive yourself?" she asked. "For the life I chose? The people I hurt? I don't know if I should. Not about should. Can you?" "I'm working on it. A little girl, maybe 6, appeared, walked up to Shanice. "Miss Shanice, my mama said to say thank you for making me feel safe." The girl hugged her and ran back. Shanice stood, tears in her eyes. That's what Amara would be saying right now. If she were here, this is her voice. These children are her voice. They discussed expansion. 2 more locations. 5th Ward and East End, same model. "We have a year of proof it works, and you have the money." Minho smiled. Rare. "Okay, let's build." Walking through the building, turning off lights, they passed walls covered in children's drawings, photos, thank you notes. One drawing caught Minho's eye. Crude stick figures with capes. Caption: "Miss Shanice and Mr. Kim save the day." That's from Terrell. He drew us as superheroes. I'm not a superhero. To him you are. To these families you are. You're a man choosing to protect instead of destroy. That's heroic. They stepped outside into Houston night. The city sprawled around them. Minho's city. But now he saw it differently. Not just territory to control. Communities to protect. People worth defending. "You know what I think?" Shanice said. "I think Amara would have liked you. She'd have liked that her name means something. That children are fed because of her. They're fed because of you. No, because we chose to work together. A grieving mother and a mafia boss. Doesn't make much sense. Nothing about this makes sense. Maybe that's why it works." They stood in front of the illuminated sign, Amara Williams Foundation. Inside, the kitchen clean and ready for tomorrow's meals. Outside, the neighborhood quieter, safer than a year ago. 2 unlikely allies having built sanctuary from brokenness. Minho thought about the 30 years he'd spent asking how much power he could take. Shanice taught him to ask how much good he could do with the power he had. That wasn't redemption. He was still dangerous, still walking in shadows. But every day he chose to be more than his worst self. Every day he chose protection over predation. Every day he chose to honor a 6-year-old girl he'd never met by making sure other 6-year-olds got to grow up. That wasn't redemption, but maybe it was enough. Minho got in his car, drove back to his penthouse, his criminal empire, his other life. But he carried something different now. Purpose. The Amara Foundation would open 2 more locations. More children would be fed. More families protected. And somewhere, in a cemetery in 3rd Ward, a little girl's gravestone read, "Amara Williams, forever 6, forever loved, forever making a difference." True power isn't measured by fear or territory. It's measured by how many lives you protect and how many broken pieces you help put back together. Kim Minho learned that lesson 30 years too late, but he learned it. And every child who walked through the doors of the Amara Foundation proved it's never too late to choose better, even for a man who once chose only violence, even for a woman who once chose only grief. Together, they chose sanctuary, and sanctuary was enough.